The scent of roasted rosemary and garlic drifted from the kitchen, curling into the air like an invitation. From my spot near the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city shimmering in Christmas lights, tiny golden flecks against a deep winter sky. My dress, a deep emerald velvet, clung just right, the fabric warm and soft against my skin. In my hand, a champagne flute caught the glow of the chandelier, sending fractured light dancing over the marble floor. The dining room behind me was nearly ready, 12 tables draped in white linen, polished cutlery glinting, the soft hum of waitstaff rehearsing their steps. My name was whispered between them, respectfully, like I had earned it. And yet, in the back of my mind, there it was, that Christmas. The one that started all of this. It had been years, but the memory still clung to me like a stubborn scent. I could still see the look on my parents' faces that morning, the two sweet smiles, the glossy wrapped box they pushed toward me. Inside, a heavy, leather-bound cookbook. At first, I thought it was thoughtful, until the words followed. "You'll be cooking for the guests tonight, sweetheart. 60 people. Alone." Back then, I had smiled like I wasn't suffocating. I had pretended I didn't hear the unspoken message, that my place was in the kitchen, not at the table. Now, as my phone buzzed with a message from my event manager, "Your parents have arrived," I felt my lips curve into a slow, private smile. The past was here, walking straight into my present. And this time I was ready. I was 22 that Christmas, old enough to vote, pay taxes, and live alone in a cramped apartment in the city, but still, in my parents' eyes, their little girl. It had snowed the night before, a soft blanket that made the street outside their house look like a holiday card. Inside, everything sparkled. Crystal bowls of sugared almonds. A tree so perfectly symmetrical it could have been plucked from a magazine. And, of course, my mother's annual guest list, a small army of relatives, neighbors, and my father's business associates. "Open this one first," my father had said, sliding a box across the polished mahogany table. My mother watched me with an expression that was just a little too expectant. The wrapping paper was thick and luxurious, tied with satin ribbon. Inside was a leather-bound cookbook, heavy, glossy pages filled with photographs of extravagant feasts. "Oh, thank you," I'd murmured, running my fingers over the embossed cover. And then came the twist. My mother leaned in, her tone bright, almost casual. "You'll be cooking from it tonight. 60 guests. All by yourself." The words hit me like cold water. I glanced around, my aunt raising an eyebrow, my cousin stifling a laugh. The pit in my stomach deepened when I realized this wasn't a request. It was an expectation. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "All alone." My father chuckled. "It'll be good practice. You're not doing much these days, are you?" The humiliation burned hot in my chest. They saw me as aimless, unaccomplished, a young woman with no real path, whose time was best spent serving. In the corner of the box, I found a slip of paper, thin, folded neatly. It wasn't from my parents. It was from my grandmother, who had passed the year before. My breath caught as I read her familiar looping handwriting. "Don't let anyone decide your table or your place at it. You can create your own." I slipped the note into my pocket before anyone noticed. That night I cooked. Alone. My hands shook as I chopped, the heat from the oven stinging my cheeks. I burned myself twice, cut myself once, and barely kept up as the clock counted down. The guests ate, praised the food, but my parents never acknowledged it beyond a vague, "See? You can be useful." When I lay in bed that night, my hands still aching, I stared at the ceiling and made myself a promise. Never again would I be cornered into service. If I cooked for 60 people again, it would be because I chose to. And they'd never see it coming. I didn't leave my parents' house in a dramatic storm out that night. No slammed doors. No shouting match. Just a silent drive back to my tiny apartment, snow crunching under my boots as I carried that cookbook up the stairs like it weighed 100 pounds. For weeks, it sat on my kitchen counter, unopened. A reminder. A dare. Then one bitter January morning, I cracked it open. Page after page of glossy photographs, elaborate roasts, towering desserts, sauces so rich they seemed to glow. I could hear my mother's voice in my head, dripping with condescension. Good practice. So I started, one recipe at a time. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because I wanted to master something for myself. The first attempts were disasters. Burnt crusts. Soups that tasted like dishwater. I sliced my finger so badly one night I almost fainted. But every failure taught me something. I bought cheap ingredients and worked until I could make them taste expensive. I learned the science behind the perfect sear, the patience for slow fermentation, the art of plating food so beautiful people hesitated to eat it. By spring, I was making dishes my neighbors couldn't stop talking about. One of them, Mrs. Ellison from down the hall, asked if I could cater her retirement party. It was only 20 people, but it felt like a stadium crowd to me. That's where I met her. Lucille, a retired head chef from a luxury hotel, silver hair twisted into a perfect bun, eyes that missed nothing. She tasted my mushroom tart, set down her fork, and said, "You could do this for real." She became my mentor, though she never called herself that. She introduced me to her old contacts, showed me the shortcuts and the tricks that only years in professional kitchens could teach. She also taught me the unglamorous side, inventory spreadsheets, supplier negotiations, handling staff who quit mid-service. It was grueling. I worked 12-hour shifts in restaurant kitchens, then came home to experiment until 2 in the morning. My hands grew calloused, my back ached constantly, and I missed birthdays, holidays, even a few rent payments. But every small win felt like oxygen. My first profitable catering job. My first big wedding client. My first feature in a local food blog, a small piece, but enough to get my phone ringing. Through it all, I kept my success off social media, where my family might see. My posts were vague. A latte here, a blurry skyline there. Let them think I was still finding myself. Within 4 years, I had built a catering company with a reputation for flawless events. By the 5th, I had purchased a rundown historic property and transformed it into a high-end restaurant that doubled as an event space. I signed the ownership papers with the same pen I'd used to sign my first catering contract. And every Christmas, without fail, I hosted my own dinner, by invitation only. This year, my guest list included 2 names I never thought I'd write down. The entrance to my restaurant was all glass and steel, framed by garlands of evergreen and gold ribbon. Outside, snowflakes swirled under the glow of vintage street lamps. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of truffle butter, mulled wine, and fresh pine from the towering Christmas tree in the corner. From the balcony above the main dining floor, I could see the guests arriving, shimmering dresses, tailored suits, cheeks pink from the cold. My staff moved like clockwork, each one dressed in crisp black and white, their trays lined with amuse-bouches that glistened under the soft light. Then I saw them. My parents. My father in his navy wool coat, my mother in a jeweled red dress, both looking around like tourists in a foreign city. They didn't know yet. Not really. They thought they'd been invited to a prestigious holiday event, courtesy of a mutual acquaintance. I stayed upstairs for a moment, watching them. My mother's gaze swept over the gold-framed art on the walls, the grand piano in the corner, the marble-topped bar stocked with bottles from every corner of the world. Her brows knit together in faint confusion. She recognized the opulence, but not the ownership. I descended the staircase slowly, the velvet of my dress whispering with each step. My heels clicked against the polished wood, and when I reached the final stair, my father finally noticed me. "Sweetheart," he said, as if unsure I was real. I smiled. Warm, controlled, almost polite. "Welcome." They followed me wordlessly as I led them to the head table. The guests already seated there, entrepreneurs, artists, city officials, greeted me with familiarity, respect. One man stood to shake my hand, joking about how the queen of the evening had finally arrived. My mother glanced between us. "You work here?" I let the question hang, savoring the silence that followed. The music seemed to hush, the clinking glasses fading into the background. "No," I said finally. "I own here." Her lips parted, but no words came out. My father's jaw tightened. "This is my restaurant," I continued, my voice even, conversational. "Every dish tonight was created in my kitchen. Every event on the calendar is booked through my company. And in case you're wondering," I leaned in slightly, "we've been fully booked for the past year." Around us, waiters swept by carrying silver domes that, when lifted, revealed plates that looked like art, seared scallops with saffron foam, wild mushroom risotto with shaved black truffle. My father's voice was low, almost grudging. "You did all this?" "Yes," I said simply. "Without your help. Without your approval. Without your cookbook." My mother flinched at the last word. I watched as their eyes roamed the room. The details they'd missed before. The framed awards on the far wall. The custom wine cellar behind glass. The staff who deferred to me without hesitation. It wasn't anger I felt. Not anymore. It was something quieter, steadier. A deep, unshakable certainty that I had built this life myself. A guest called my name from across the room, and I excused myself, leaving them to sit with the truth. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother reach for her glass of champagne, her hand trembling just enough to make it spill over the rim. My father said nothing, but his gaze stayed fixed on me, as if trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the girl they once handed a cookbook and 60 guests as a lesson. This time, the lesson was mine to give. Dinner had just ended when my parents found me again, hovering near the dessert display. The table was lined with miniature pavlovas, hand-painted chocolates, and macarons in jewel tones. Guests were laughing, glasses clinking, the kind of warmth I'd once wished for from my own family. My mother's smile was tentative, brittle at the edges. "Everything was beautiful," she said, her voice struggling to keep steady. My father cleared his throat. "You've done well for yourself." The words sounded foreign in his mouth, like he'd borrowed them from someone else. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let them feel it. Finally, my father added, "We were wondering if maybe you'd be willing to help us host next year's Christmas party. It's been years since we—" I raised a hand gently, stopping him mid-sentence. "If I cater for you again, it will be on my terms." "Completely." They both stiffened. "My terms are simple," I continued. "First, you'll pay full price. No family discounts. My staff and my time are worth what they cost." My mother opened her mouth to object, but I pressed on. "Second, you'll treat my team with the respect they deserve. No snapping fingers, no undercutting their work." I saw her lips tighten, but she stayed silent. "And third, when you introduce me to your guests, you'll tell them exactly who I am. Not helping in the kitchen. Not dabbling in catering. You'll tell them I own one of the top-rated restaurants in the city, and I built it from nothing." They looked at me like they were hearing a foreign language. "You think we'd," my father began. "I don't think," I interrupted softly. "I know how you've spoken about me in the past. That ends now. Or I don't take the job." I let the words settle, not as a threat, but as a boundary carved into stone. "You've always had a knack for conditions," my mother said with a trace of bitterness. "No," I corrected. "I have a knack for survival. And now for thriving. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect, something I learned to give myself when no one else did." A flicker of something, maybe guilt, crossed my father's face. My mother, though, looked down, adjusting her bracelet like it might distract her from what I'd said. I softened my tone, just enough. "I'm willing to work with you. But I won't go back to being the girl you handed a cookbook to because you thought she wasn't doing much with her life. I have built more than you ever imagined. And if you can't see that, then this conversation ends here." They didn't answer right away. But when my father finally nodded, it was slow, deliberate. My mother murmured, "We'll think about it." I smiled faintly. "Do that." 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the restaurant. No note, no return address, just a square box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside was the cookbook. The same leather-bound one from that Christmas years ago. Its once shiny cover was worn now, the spine a little cracked from use. Tucked between the pages, I found the folded slip of paper, my grandmother's handwriting still as steady and sure as I remembered. Don't let anyone decide your table or your place at it. You can create your own. I sat in my office for a long while, running my fingers over the words. Outside my door, the hum of the kitchen carried on, the hiss of pans, the clatter of plates, the low murmur of my staff working like a single, practiced heartbeat. A week after that, my parents came for lunch. Just the three of us. No audience, no performance. My mother complimented the bread before tearing into it. My father asked questions about the menu. They were small gestures, but they were different. When they left, my father shook my hand, an oddly formal gesture, but one that felt heavier than it should have. My mother hugged me, quick and awkward, but she hugged me. I didn't fool myself into thinking years of strain could vanish over a single meal. Change takes time. But for the first time, I saw the possibility of it. That night, after service ended, I placed the cookbook on a high shelf in the dining room. Not tucked away, but displayed like a relic. Guests might think it was just another piece of decor, but I knew better. It wasn't a reminder of humiliation anymore. It was a monument to the choice I made that night, to stop being the girl they underestimated and become the woman they couldn't ignore. I locked up the restaurant, stepped outside into the crisp winter air, and watched the snowflakes drift down onto the quiet street. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed, and I thought about all the Christmases still ahead, the ones I would host, on my terms at my table. I smiled to myself, my breath curling white in the night air. If I ever cook for 60 guests again, I thought, it'll be because I invited them.